My sister took over my 23rd birthday while I stood ignored in the corner. I didn't argue. Months later, they finally realized what they lost, but by then, I was already gone. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even walk out. I just stood there, pressed against the wall, watching my sister blow out the candles on my birthday cake, while everyone applauded like this was exactly how the night was meant to go. It was my 23rd birthday. Mine. Yet guests walked past me without hesitation, carrying gifts with her name written neatly on the tags. Someone asked if I was part of the staff. Another told me to step aside so they could get a better photo of the real birthday girl. My parents didn't notice. Or worse, they did, and chose not to care. Months later, they would tell me they never meant for it to happen like that. They would say they were sorry. They would ask why I suddenly pulled away and stopped coming home. But nothing about that night was sudden. That birthday didn't break me. It finally proved what I had spent my whole life trying not to believe. When it mattered most, I was never the one they chose. The venue was beautiful in a way that felt almost cruel. Everything shimmered crystal chandeliers overhead. White tablecloths stretched perfectly smooth, soft gold lights warming the room like a promise. This was the kind of place people chose when they wanted to prove something. Success, unity, celebration. My parents had told me this was my real birthday celebration. Something special this year, my mom said weeks ago. You deserve it, my dad added, almost like he was reassuring himself. So I arrived early. Of course I did. I wore the navy blue dress my mom had helped me pick out, the one she said would make me look elegant and grown. I remember standing in front of the mirror before leaving, smoothing the fabric down with nervous hands, telling myself that 23 mattered, that this was the age when things finally shifted, when I would stop feeling like an afterthought. I took my place near the entrance, just like my parents asked, ready to greet guests as they arrived. At first, it felt normal. Relative hugged me, friends smiled, but something was off. The conversations didn't linger. People smiled at me, then looked past me. Is Emily here yet? Where's your sister? I heard Emily organize something amazing. The first time I laughed awkwardly. She'll be here soon, I said, correcting nothing. The second time I tried again. It's actually my birthday tonight, they blinked, smiled politely, apologized, then moved on. By the fourth or fifth time, I stopped correcting anyone at all. I told myself it was harmless, a misunderstanding. Emily was older, louder, easier to remember. This didn't mean anything. I'd learned to explain things away like that a long time ago. As more guests arrived, the room slowly filled with laughter and movement. Drinks were poured. Music grew louder. I stood there, still near the door, watching people bypass me entirely to place their gifts on a large table near the center of the room. I noticed then that many of the gift tags weren't addressed to me. They had Emily's name written carefully in looping handwriting. My chest tightened, but I swallowed the feeling down. I didn't want to be dramatic. I didn't want to ruin the night by making assumptions. That was always the warning, spoken or unspoken. Don't make things uncomfortable. Then Emily arrived. The shift was immediate and undeniable. Conversations paused. Heads turned. Someone actually clapped. My parents' faces changed in an instant relief. Excitement. Pride all rushing in at once. My mom hurried toward her, adjusting her hair, straightening her dress like she always did. My dad wrapped an arm around her shoulders, smiling so openly it hurt to see. Now it can start, someone said nearby. I wasn't sure if they realized what they'd said. I wasn't sure they cared. I stayed where I was, a few steps behind everyone else, clutching my purse like it anchored me to the floor. No one introduced me, no one waved me over. I watched from a distance as my sister moved through the room with ease, greeting guests, laughing, accepting compliments, as if this attention belonged to her by default. At one point, I tried to catch my mom's eye, just once. She looked straight through me, already scanning the room for someone more important. That was when the realization began to sink in slow and heavy. This night wasn't slipping away suddenly. It was being taken inch by inch, moment by moment, while I stood there convincing myself it wasn't happening. I told myself to wait, to be patient, to not jump to conclusions. But deep down, I already knew. This wasn't just another birthday. It was proof of something I had spent my whole life trying not to name. And the worst part wasn't that they didn't notice me. It was that this time, they didn't even pretend to look. I realized something was seriously wrong the moment the seating chart went up. It stood on a tall easel near the entrance, clipped neatly in place, printed in elegant black lettering like it was meant to impress. Guests gathered around it casually, pointing, laughing, locating their tables before drifting deeper into the room. I told myself not to look too closely. I told myself it didn't matter. But my feet carried me there anyway. I scanned the top of the list first. Table 1. Mom, Dad, Emily, Jake, Emily's boyfriend. A few family friends whose faces appeared in every holiday photo, every framed memory on the living room wall. I stared at the names, waiting for mine to appear just beneath theirs. It didn't. I checked again, slower this time. Then I followed the list downward, my finger tracing each table as my chest tightened with every step. Table 2, Table 3, Table 4. Still nothing. By the time I found my name, my hands were shaking. Sophia, Table 8, the last table tucked into the back corner of the room, half hidden behind a decorative pillar, and dangerously close to the service door. For a moment, I just stood there staring at the ink, as if it might rearrange itself if I waited long enough. I told myself there had to be a mistake. A printing error. A last-minute change no one had told me about. I turned to my mom, who was standing nearby, laughing with one of Emily's friends. "Hey," I said quietly, holding the edge of the easel like it was the only thing keeping me upright. "I think my seat might be wrong." She barely glanced at the chart. "Oh, that's intentional," she said easily. "Emily needed to be up front tonight, you understand. It was a braving I didn't, but I nodded anyway." Dinner was served soon after, and I took my place at table 8. From there, I had a perfect view of everything, and somehow that made it worse. I watched my parents lean in toward Emily, nodding at every word she said as if it mattered deeply. I watched guests stop by her table, laughing, complimenting her dress, thanking her for such a beautiful celebration. No one came to mine. A server approached and placed a champagne flute in front of me. "Are you with the birthday girl?" she asked kindly. The words hit me like a slap I couldn't react to. I opened my mouth, closed it, then nodded, because correcting her felt like standing up in the middle of the room and shouting something no one wanted to hear. When the lights dimmed and the cake appeared, my heart started pounding despite myself. 3 tiers, white frosting, gold detailing. Elegant, expensive. I leaned forward in my chair, a small, fragile hope rising in my chest. Maybe this was the moment. Maybe this was where they fixed it. The cake was set down in front of table 1. Cameras lifted into the air. Applause filled the room. And then I saw it. "Happy 23rd birthday, Emily." The room erupted. Someone handed my sister the knife. Someone wrapped an arm around her shoulders. My parents stood on either side of her. Smiling. For photos like this was a scene they'd practiced 100 times. I didn't stand up. I didn't clap. I couldn't move. As Emily leaned forward to blow out the candles, the realization finally settled in. Heavy and undeniable. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't an accident. They hadn't forgotten my birthday. They had replaced it. I don't remember pushing my chair back, but at some point I wasn't sitting anymore. The noise in the room felt too loud, too close, like it was pressing in on me from every direction. Applause rang in my ears as Emily laughed, candles still smoking in front of her, my parents frozen in their perfect smiling pose. I moved without thinking. I drifted toward the edge of the room, then farther, until my back touched the cool marble wall near the exit. From there, I could see everything. No one noticed me leave my table. No one asked where I was going. It was as if I had simply faded out of the picture. People crowded around Emily, phones raised, calling her name, urging her to smile, to look this way, to cut the cake again. Just in case. My mom adjusted the candles. My dad joked loudly with relatives. Someone toasted to my sister's future, her success, her strength. Not one person said my name. I tried to catch my mother's eye. I stood straighter, hoping movement alone would pull her attention. She looked right past me, her focus locked on Emily, her expression glowing with pride. "This is her night," I heard her say to someone nearby. Her night. The words echoed in my chest, hollow and final. I pressed my fingers into my palm, grounding myself, reminding myself not to cry. Crying would only make this worse. Crying would make me the problem, the difficult one, the ungrateful daughter who couldn't just be happy for her sister. A woman I didn't recognize approached me, holding a stack of empty plates. "Sorry," she said politely, already stepping closer. "Could you help me take these back? For a second, I thought she was joking. Then I saw the way she looked at me, not unkindly, just mistaken. I nodded and took the plates, my hand steady, even as something inside me cracked. I walked toward the kitchen, passing the laughter, the music, the celebration that was never meant for me behind me. The party continued without interruption, standing in that corner, carrying dishes away from my own birthday. I understood something with painful clarity. I wasn't just being ignored. I was being erased quietly, politely, in full view of everyone. Hannah found me just outside the ballroom, near the hallway that led to the restrooms. I must have been gone longer than I realized, because the moment she saw my face, she stopped smiling. "Sophia, what happened?" she asked quietly. I tried to answer her, but my throat closed around the words. Instead, I handed her my phone. Someone had already posted photos from the party online, Emily in the center, my parents on either side of her, the cake glowing in front of them. The caption read, "Perfect night for a perfect birthday girl." Hannah's jaw tightened as she scrolled. "They put her name on the cake," she said flatly. I nodded. That was all I could manage. "This is not okay," she said. "This isn't just a mistake." I shook my head automatically. "It's fine. I don't want to make a scene." She looked at me, then really looked at me, and her voice softened. "Sophia, you already disappeared. Leaving won't be the scene. Staying will." The words hit harder than anything else that night. We started walking toward the exit. My legs felt heavy, like I was moving through water. Every step pulling me farther from something I had spent my whole life chasing. Right before we reached the doors, I heard my name. Sophia, my mom heels clicked sharply against the floor as she hurried toward us, irritation written clearly across her face. "Not worry, not concern, irritation, where are you going?" she demanded. "You can't just leave in the middle of your sister's party." I stared at her, the phrase repeating in my head. "Your sister's party." "It was supposed to be my birthday," I said, my voice trembling despite my effort to stay calm. She sighed, rubbing her temple the way she always did when I inconvenienced her. "Don't do this right now. People are watching. You're being dramatic." Something inside me finally broke, but not loudly, not explosively. It was quiet, like a door closing after being held open for too long. "I've been quiet my whole life," I said, "and it never changed anything." Her expression hardened instantly. "If you walk out now," she said coldly, "don't expect us to fix this later. You're 23. You don't have everything figured out. You need this family." I looked at her for a long moment, really looked at her, and felt a strange calm settle over me. "I needed you," I said softly. "Tonight proved I never had you." She opened her mouth to respond, but I had already turned away. I walked out with Hannah into the cool night air. The music from the ballroom faded behind us, replaced by silence and the sound of my own breathing. As we reached the parking lot, I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel victory, but I felt something new, finality. That night, I didn't just leave a party. I walked away from the version of myself who kept hoping they'd finally choose her. That night didn't end with shouting or slammed doors. It ended quietly, which somehow made it worse. Hannah drove while I stared out the window, watching streetlights blur into streaks of white and gold. She didn't ask questions. She didn't tell me everything would be okay. She just let the silence sit between us. Heavy but respectful, like she understood that words would only cheapen what I was feeling. I didn't go back to my parents' house. I stayed in Hannah's spare room, telling myself it was temporary. Just a few nights until things cooled down, until someone called and asked where I was, until someone noticed I was gone. No one did. My mom called 2 days later. Her voice was tight, controlled. "You embarrassed the family," she said. "You owe Emily an apology." She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't ask where I was sleeping. My dad sent a short text the next week. "We should talk when you're ready to be reasonable." Emily didn't reach out at all. That silence did more damage than the party ever could. It stripped away the last excuse. I had been clinging to the idea that maybe they loved me, but just didn't know how to show it. Love doesn't disappear that easily, but interest does. Life got hard fast. I worked longer hours, took extra shifts, learned how to stretch groceries across an entire week. I learned which bills could be paid late without consequences and which ones absolutely couldn't. At night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my chest tight with doubt. Maybe I was selfish. Maybe I had overreacted. Maybe walking away had been a mistake. But every morning, I woke up in a space where no one expected me to apologize for existing. No one compared me to my sister. No one told me to be patient, to be grateful, to wait my turn. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, I started to breathe differently. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes. I stopped rehearsing conversations in my head. I stopped shrinking myself to fit into spaces where I had never been welcomed. I wasn't thriving yet. I was exhausted, lonely, scared. But for the first time in my life, my pain wasn't being minimized or redirected or blamed on me. I was surviving on my own terms. And somewhere between late-night bus rides, cheap dinners, and the quiet safety of Hannah's apartment, I realized something that terrified and empowered me at the same time. If I could survive without being chosen, then maybe being chosen had never been the point at all. Time passed in a way I wasn't prepared for, not dramatically, not with closure, just quietly, day after day, until my life began to stretch beyond the space my family used to occupy. I moved out of Hannah's spare room after 8 months and into a small studio apartment across town. The walls were thin, the floor creaked, and the heater worked only when it felt like it. But the lease was in my name. The furniture was mine. The silence belonged to me. I threw myself into work because it was easier than thinking. I stayed late, volunteered for projects no one wanted, learned skills I hadn't planned on learning. For the first time, people depended on me, and not because I was convenient or compliant, but because I was capable. That mattered more than I expected. The first year without my family was the hardest. Holidays passed without calls. My birthday came and went with a single message from my dad. Hope you're doing well. Nothing else. No follow-up. No effort. I stopped waiting after that. Things began to change during my second year on my own. I was promoted at work, given responsibility, trust, a raise that meant I didn't have to count every dollar at the grocery store anymore. I started therapy not because I was falling apart, but because I wanted to understand why being invisible for so long still hurt so much. That's when I learned the words emotional neglect, and suddenly my entire childhood made sense. The shift didn't come from my family, it came from visibility. A client recommended me for a local business feature, young women carving out their own paths. I hesitated before agreeing. Part of me still feared being seen, feared that attention would invite them back into my life before I was ready. But another part of me was tired of hiding as if I'd done something wrong. The article went live on a Thursday morning. By Friday afternoon, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. My dad emailed, "First, I saw the article, proud of you, let catch up." My mom followed soon after from an address I hadn't blocked, yet this makes it sound like we pushed you away. That's not how we remember it. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking, not with fear, but with a slow, rising anger. They hadn't remembered me when I was struggling. They hadn't noticed my absence at holidays, at birthdays, at ordinary Sundays. But now that my name was public, now that people were asking questions, suddenly my story mattered. Emily called that night. "You didn't have to say it like that," she said, her voice tense. "I didn't say anything about you," I replied. "But people know," she snapped. "They're connecting dots. Mom's been crying all day." I closed my eyes, exhaustion washing over me. "I spent my whole life protecting everyone else's comfort," I said quietly. "I'm done doing that." There was a long silence on the line. Finally, Emily spoke again. Softer this time. "We should talk, all of us." That was the moment I understood the truth. They didn't reach out because they missed me. They reached out because my absence had finally become inconvenient. And this time, I wasn't walking back in just to make things easier for them. We met on a Sunday afternoon at a quiet cafe halfway between my apartment and my parents' house. I chose it deliberately public, neutral, somewhere no one could raise their voice without drawing attention. I needed witnesses, even if they were strangers sipping coffee nearby. My parents were already seated when I arrived. My mom sat rigidly, hands wrapped tightly around her cup, as if she needed something to hold her together. My dad stared at the table, tracing invisible lines in the wood. Emily arrived last, her confidence stripped down to something brittle and uncertain. For a few seconds, no one spoke. "I don't understand how it got this bad," my mom finally said. Her voice trembled, but there was still an edge to it. "We did the best we could." I felt my pulse quicken, heat rising in my chest. "Your best," I said slowly, "wasn't enough. And pretending it was doesn't change what happened. Helping in the grieve and meter Dean in the stas and the frief, and in the grieve and was made from the win." My dad looked up then. "You never told us you were hurting like this." I met his eyes. Refusing to look away, I told you every time I was dismissed, every time I was told not to be selfish, every time my needs were treated like inconveniences. Instead of warnings, Emily shifted in her seat. I didn't realize you felt so pushed out. She said I thought you were just independent. Independent, the words stung more than I expected. I was independent because no one showed up for me. I said that's not strength, that's survival, so my mom reached across the table, trying to take my hand. I pulled back. Not angrily, just firmly. I'm not here to be comforted, I said. And I'm not here to make this easier for you. Silence fell again. Thicker this time. I've been in therapy. I continued. I've learned what emotional neglect looks like. I've learned what boundaries are. And I'm done pretending this was all just a misunderstanding. My dad frowned. So what are you saying, that you're cutting us off? I took a breath, steadying myself. My hands were shaking, but my voice didn't. No, I'm saying this is the last time I show up without protecting myself. I laid it out clearly. No rewriting the past, no guilt tripping, no dismissing my feelings to preserve appearances. Contact would be respectful, or it wouldn't happen at all. If those boundaries were crossed, I would step away again without warning, without explanation. They didn't like it. I could see that in their faces. My mom looked wounded. My dad looked uncomfortable. Emily looked guilty. But for the first time, their reactions didn't dictate my next move. When the conversation ended, we stood awkwardly, unsure how to say goodbye. No hugs followed, just a quiet understanding that something fundamental had shifted. As I walked out of that cafe alone, my legs felt weak, my heart racing, but there was a strange sense of relief settling in my chest. For the first time in my life, I hadn't asked to be chosen. I had chosen myself. My 24th birthday came quietly. There was no grand venue this time, no seating chart, no audience waiting to decide whether I mattered. I woke up in my small apartment to sunlight slipping through the blinds and the soft hum of the city outside. For the first time in years, my chest didn't feel tight when I opened my eyes. Hannah came over with coffee and a small cake she bought on the way. 2 friends from work joined us later that evening. We ate takeout straight from the containers, laughed too loudly, and stayed up longer than we planned. No one forgot my name. No one asked me to step aside. No one needed reminding that this day belonged to me. My phone buzzed a few times. My parents sent careful messages, short, polite, trying. I read them without anger, without hope, just acknowledgement. Emily sent one too. I know I can't undo what I did. I just want you to know I finally see you. I stared at the words for a long time before replying. Thank you for saying that. Nothing more, nothing less. And that was enough. I realized then that when people say it's too late, they assume it means bitterness, punishment, or revenge. But for me, it meant something quieter. It meant clarity. It meant freedom. My family didn't lose me the night they ignored my 23rd birthday. They lost me months later when I stopped standing in corners, waiting to be noticed, and started building a life where I didn't have to beg for a place at the table. I didn't walk away angry. I walked away healed enough to know I deserved better. And this time, I didn't need anyone's permission to believe it.